Ke nna Motshabi Moloi, moradi wa Albertina, Mama Chona le Joseph Mbutana Moloi. Ke le lekgolokwe le hlaba kotswana, le hlaba kgoka le mao ka sebonong, le hlaba le isa kgorong ha makgwakgwane. Makgwakgwane a eja a e halala, a re kgutla hape o e eketsa, motho wa wetsi.
Welcome to The Journey with Mpho podcast, a sacred space for healing, love, and rediscovering your life purpose. Introducing your host, Mpho.
Hello, JWM family. A couple of weeks ago on a Sunday, I had spent the morning on Twitter. The intention was to learn what fellow South Africans have to say about the increasing rate of femicide in the country. Now, for those who are not familiar with the term femicide, please refer to episode 16 of the show and then kindly rejoin this discussion. My Twitter search was driven by the partial motivation to find out what happened to Tshogofatso Pule, an 8 months pregnant woman who was stabbed several times and found hanging on a tree. The search did not reveal much about Tshogofatso's brutal murder, but what I did discover was slightly more frightening and sickening. In recent years, as many as 400 and something women have been brutally murdered by their spouses and people unknown to them. While I was searching, there were people tweeting about recently missing loved ones. Most times, stories of the search never end well. A tweet by @K_Putuma read, "Every 3 hours, a woman is murdered in South Africa. 2,930 women were murdered in 2017 and 18. That's 56 murders a day." The Global Peace Index statistics show that the violence in South Africa is similar to countries at war or in conflict. As some of you already know, domestic abuse and violence narratives are a trigger for me. Growing up, having witnessed my mom be involved in physically and emotionally abusive relationships, followed by finding the early adult me trapped in similar situations, I never neglect to show gratitude that my mother got out alive, and so did I. This is not the case for many, many South African women. So after a couple of hours on Twitter and feeling incredibly helpless, I go live on the Journey with Mpho Instagram account. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do about the plight of South African women. So I'm crying and pleading with everyone, anyone. And the only person in that live video was Melissa. That's how her and I recently reunited. We are longtime high school friends, and if there's anyone who could tell you about the younger boy crazy Mpho, it's her. Hi Melissa, welcome to Journey with Mpho.
Hey, Mpho. Thank you so much for having me. Those were the days. I won't lie. I enjoyed your stories.
Thank you so much for agreeing to partake in our first ever remote interview.
I know, my first ever as well, so I feel completely honored, and thank you for choosing to have me as your guest. So yeah, thank you.
Super excited. Melissa, our reunion ooh, that word. Our reunion conversation was rich and lengthy. Connecting with you started the healing process for another part of me that still suffered. I realized I cannot continue to mentally go back to that place. So I just wanted to thank you for
No.
making me realize that there was still a part of me that was getting triggered by stories like this.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. I don't know what happened or how we actually ended up speaking that night, I guess. It was things outside of us that brought us together. Um, but it can be very difficult. I tend to check up on certain friends that I know who've also been through abuse with their partners in the past, and when things like this come up, a lot of women get triggered. A lot of women are scared. A lot of women who haven't experienced this also don't know what or how to feel about themselves, their families, their loved ones. So it is quite a triggering time for women. And we just had another. I don't know if you heard, Justice for Kwasa. She just got stabbed recently. I think the news broke out 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. 19, she was a Wits University student, and she, I think, went to her boyfriend to break up with him, and he stabbed her to death and then committed suicide himself. So, yeah, so it still continues. It's still here, and there's obviously a lot of stories, and you can't exactly know which is the true story and which isn't, because a lot of people say a lot of things about a specific situation, but this is what happened. She was killed by her boyfriend, and we are outraged again. South Africa is outraged yet again. Yeah.
I have so many questions regarding your thoughts about this whole thing, and I'll get into them later too. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Sure.
So before Melissa and I get started, if you guys don't already know, Melissa and I are discussing gender-based violence, mainly in South Africa. Please note, we are not health or medical professionals, just two friends who have experienced instances of abuse. The opinions or advice we share is solely that, our unendorsed opinions. We hope this discussion will inspire thoughts, spark necessary conversations, and lead us to a place of helpful action. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Melissa. I'm a little bit excited, but I'm also like wary.
Yeah.
You know,
Why?
I'm treading lightly.
Really? Why is that?
When we are talking gender-based violence in South Africa, there's a fine line between seeking a solution and victim blaming.
Yeah.
So I try to make sure that I'm checking myself as I speak.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, are you thinking about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because that's very important. As a survivor, I cannot speak for other people's experiences. I can only speak of my own.
Yeah.
You know? So
yeah, for sure.
it's just that checking
Yeah.
that kind of makes me nervous.
For sure, especially in this day and age. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's jump right into it.
Sure.
How important do you think it is for women who experience domestic violence to share their stories?
It's very important, but I wouldn't say that it's something that should be forced. I think it should be done when the woman is ready to tell her story as well, because I don't think it's fair to force somebody to tell a story they're not quite ready to tell. Everyone in their own time. But I think the most important thing about telling our stories is how we tell them. Because we often tell our stories from a victim mentality kind of place, and we relive the experience instead of speaking about it from a more empowered warrior, turned my wounds into battle scars kind of place. I think that's where we should be going forward with our stories. But I think it's super, super important to share your story always. I think it's important because we have kids every day, so there are people growing up unaware of these things all the time. So we are in charge of the future generations, and it's important to tell these stories for educational purposes, for awareness, and also for support to know that, oh my God, I'm not the only one that actually read. Oh my God, I'm not crazy. Oh, okay, so I was right.
I definitely resonate with the how you tell the story. I think that's a very, very big part of telling the story. I hear you say you have to tell it in an empowering way so you don't feel like the victim. But then I also think about instances where I've related to stories that have been told in the victim's voice because it's vulnerability, right? When you see that a little bit of that vulnerability,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, it's safe to come out. This is it's reassuring in some sense. But there are times where that empowerment needs to
Hmm.
come in and you can't stay in that place for too long. And that's the problem about retelling our experiences, whether
Mm,
positive or bad experiences, right? We can stay in that same
sure.
place and not move forward.
Yeah, for sure. We're stuck there. We're living. That's our story. That's the story of our life right now. That we're victims. So we
Mm,
live as victims. We act as
yeah.
victims. We think as victims. That's who we believe we
Mm,
are. So it's very important to definitely let
mm,
it out. Talk to somebody. Let it out. If you're angry, let it out. Let it all out. But
mm,
when you do come forward and you want to tell the story as something that's been a part of your life in a significant way, then that's when it is time to change the narrative. And changing the narrative when you also feel like you're ready to change it. But the problem with that is that we
mm.
can get too comfortable in our story that we may never feel ready to change the narrative. Um,
That's so
yeah, we
true.
may not realize
So
that we've
true.
already healed sometimes because we're so used to telling the story. It's just comfortable being the victim sometimes. So we also need to be
Mm,
wary of
mm,
those sorts of things. Self awareness is always key in everything that we do.
mm,
Yeah,
mm. That's so true. It's being in tune with
for
yourself.
sure. Knowing where you at.
Mm, mm.
Mhm.
When we flip the coin a little bit to think about the importance of telling stories, the flip side of this is what are the things that prevent women from sharing those kinds of stories?
Definitely beliefs. Um, the
Mm,
kind of beliefs and system that we grow up in. Also, after going through such a traumatic experience, it kind of changes you psychologically. You are traumatized. Sometimes you want to be seen a
mm,
certain
mm,
way, or you think you're going to be seen a certain way, and you choose not to tell that
mm,
story. Sometimes you've already tried to. Maybe you don't know, or you didn't know how to, but maybe you've tried and it got brushed off, or someone told you were crazy the first time you tried, so you thought, okay, maybe keep it to myself then.
yeah.
I don't want to sound crazy. Sometimes you feel
Mm,
it may feel like um, you're being a burden to people. It may feel like you may
mm,
also want to look at it as strength to deal with it on your own, but it's actually not strengthening it at all as
mm,
well. It might be personality traits. Maybe you're just not somebody that opens up very easily, so you go further into your shell. Um, and yeah,
mm,
I think also just growing up, how comfortable were you in expressing yourself growing up and expressing your emotions? How much was your environment conducive to um, you being allowed to say however you feel at any moment and any point? Also, your support
mm,
system. Do you have people that you feel like you can talk to? Because maybe sometimes people want to talk to people, but they don't feel like they have that trusted circle of
mm,
friends or family, or maybe
mm.
therapy wasn't something that was encouraged, so it's looked down upon, and that's like, okay, no, I'm not going to therapy. Hell no. And yeah, stigmas,
Mm,
definitely.
mm,
Societal stigmas, maybe things that you've seen on the internet or
mm,
yeah, or it could be just plain uncomfortable. You don't know, you don't have the words. It's plain like it's so uncomfortable or it's too painful to even speak about it. I think those are some of the factors that can contribute to that.
So many good things that you raised. It kind of ties in with my next question, which was going to be, how do we help when stories are being shared? Because obviously human instinct wants to help, so how do you help? But I think it is so important to create intentional spaces of support, where we don't
Yeah,
try and control the
yeah,
narrative or try and do anything. Sometimes people just want to be heard. And as a community
yeah,
and a global community in that fashion, we are so disconnected from each other that we barely give people the gift of listening to each
yeah.
other. And so I hear all these things that you're saying,
True.
having a good support system, learning I think for myself, how to be a good friend, a good, sister, and just listen. Like,
Yeah,
you don't have to do anything about it, but just
yeah,
give your attention and say, okay, now that we
yeah,
have spoken about this and you have shared what you have shared, what is it that you want? And if there is nothing, being comfortable with the nothing, because I think sometimes we get disheartened and we're like, well, they don't
yeah.
want to leave or they're making excuses or whatever. But it's not really our choice because we'll never truly know. In Sesotho, they say, Stulos chisa baduting modima
Mm,
sona. I may have gotten it mixed up, but it
mm,
basically in English translates to, if you're sitting in a chair and it's really, really, really hot, only you know how
yeah,
hot that chair is.
mm.
I cannot stand from the side and be like, oh, hey, no, keep sitting.
True.
It's not that hot. I mean, or you should probably get up now. And so
Mm,
it's a really sad thing to try and navigate and try and help with, because there's so many, I think each time something happens to a woman in South Africa, there's initiatives and there's conversations and there's things happening in the
mm,
background, but never really solidified life changing
mm,
solutions.
mm. Yeah, and I mean, all the
Mm,
hashtags in the world are not gonna change. It's not gonna change. It's not gonna create changed behavior. It's definitely gonna create awareness, which is exactly what we need. And this is the tough part because change begins with you. So, as much as you want somebody to change, as much as you
mhm,
want
mhm,
changed behavior, you cannot change somebody if they don't want to change or if they don't see the need to change for themselves. And that's why I was telling you in the conversation we had
mm,
that it
mm,
dates far back. It's a mentality thing. It's a childhood trauma thing. It's a growing up thing because babies aren't born evil. Babies don't think of rape. They don't think of killing. They don't think of those things. So for me,
mm,
the solutions are within
mm,
our hands now, I feel, because clearly what has been done so far is the results of what we have. So if we feel that we need change, we are the ones who need to start
mm,
stepping up. And like I said, it starts with the younger generation. It
mm,
starts with awareness in that place. Because sometimes you grow up in homes that don't really talk about these things openly, um, or they don't really bring awareness to
mm,
the
mm,
kind of situations and reality that we do live in. And we don't learn much about self awareness, knowing that because you're angry at something, it doesn't mean that you can hit the person you're with. you know, um, Knowing that that's not learned behavior, especially if you're growing up in
mm,
an abusive home, that's even worse because that's the life that you do know.
mhm,
So we do need to create systems, and like you said, safe spaces in
mm,
more public areas and in our community for these kinds of discussions, for encouragement
mm,
also from the guys, because yes, the girls are going through it, and it's terrible, and it's the worst thing you can ever go through, and no one deserves to go through that. But it's an even bigger cry for help from the guys. They
Mm,
don't know how to deal with their emotions. They don't know how to deal with themselves, their egos,
mm,
their insecurities, and this is how they are dealing with it. This is their reaction to all of those things. So I think it's also important to create
mm,
self-awareness
yeah,
sort of classes or seminars with guys, to show them that it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to be
mm,
upset. It's okay to do this. It's just that this ego-driven behavior is not the answer either. Yeah.
mm, mm. That's such a powerful thing to note. This is a discussion between two females, and I hope in the future we can bring the gentleman into the conversation. But I think vulnerability in men is such a
Oh,
sexy thing. Like I keep telling my guy friends this. I'm like, please, like, you don't have to be the guy here. You can just be human and you can be you. And if you want to cry and if you feel like things are going in a bad direction, then hit me up
yeah,
and be real with me. Like, you don't have to put up a
yeah,
face and a wall. Like, there's no expectation in my and this is what I tell Michael
yeah,
too, my husband. There's not an expectation for him to provide. I don't want him to feel overwhelmed, like, oh, I'm the guy, I'm supposed to be doing this and this and
yeah,
this and this. Times
yeah,
have changed, and I too can be an equal party. Women are fighting for equal pay. And that's what it means too, like equal emotion in the
yeah,
house too. You don't have to feel burdened by our
yeah,
responsibilities. And I think that's what I find culturally and tribally in a lot of South African cultures, like the men indota must do this and this and this
yeah,
and this. I'm like, guys, these people are human. They are earning just as little as women are in the country. They're trying to make ends meet. They come from families that are still coming out of oppression. So many different things at play. I can see not making excuses ever at all for any kind
yeah,
of meltdown or tantrum, but I could see where it would be
yeah,
coming from. And you said something about you know men dealing with the
yeah,
inner demons. It's like there's helping a man deal with his
yeah,
inner demons, right? And being in the firing line of those demons. What do you
yeah.
think are some
Oh
of
God.
the red flags women should take seriously in the
Oh
early stages
God.
of the
Oh
relationship?
God. Oh God. Oh God.
I loaded it up, yeah.
You did. You did. You set up the firing line. Oh God. And yeah, to that point, I wish I had someone like me to say all these things that I'm about to say as well.
Mm,
Because sometimes guys are aware of their insecurities. I was with a guy who was aware of his insecurities. He was aware of his emotions. He was aware of what he was doing, but he still chose to do it anyways.
mm,
So now it's about us being able to recognize that and saying, this is not for me.
mm,
Um,
mm,
so I think some of the red flags, definitely any sort of controlling behavior,
mm,
any sort of control being imposed onto you. No, you can't speak to this person. Why are you doing this? No, you can't wear that. No, you can't say that. No, you can't speak to this person. No, you can't go to your friends. No, you can't see your mom. No, you can't.
mm,
That kind of controlling behavior as well. Let's go home. It's time to go home. You can't go to this place. That's
mm,
number one. No one should be able to tell you what to do. You should feel free and encouraged to be yourself, to have the friends that you have. Um, your relationship should be based on trust, not control.
mm,
And yeah, definitely any slight comments or suggestions that put you down any backhanded compliments, weird comments on, let's say, your body, or if they compare you to other
Mm,
women or make you feel insecure in any way, especially if it's in a
mm,
way you've never felt by yourself. Um, I think if he doesn't want to be involved in your life, in a very important part of your life, especially, I think that's an interesting red flag. Um, Also, it's very important
mm,
to understand the person's background, understand how they grew up, understand what their relationship
mm,
is with their mom and their dad and their family just in general. I think that's an important aspect to look at. I think you can
mm,
learn a lot from a person by learning about how they grew up and their relationship with their parents. Um, and also any
mm.
obvious behaviors like anger issues, um, substance abuse in any sort of way, and patterns can also be a red flag. Sometimes it's not obvious right at the beginning, but if you notice a pattern that doesn't sit right with you, then you have
Yeah.
to address it. So maybe
Mm,
you fight and then you think it's over and apologize. Oh, okay, changed
mm,
behavior for like 2 days. Then you find yourself in the same pattern in the same cycles. If you're in the same cycle with someone, that is a red flag. You cannot. There's no growth. You're stuck in a cycle. That's a huge red flag. Yeah, and that's what I can think of at the top of my head. I'm sure there's plenty more.
yeah. Yeah. I think in the initial stages, for me, it's so important to date someone who comes with a reference. And when I say
Ooh,
reference, I mean friends who may know
yeah.
him, or family members that may know him. Like dating someone who other people can tell you about, not because you're going to believe what those people tell you about that person, but you'll get a better understanding of a side of himself that he's shown to other people and you may have not necessarily seen. So when he does show you sides of himself, you'll have good reference. We like, oh, Uwanbani once said maybe this is like trying to knit the story together, trying to knit the person together. Now there will be a lot of sifting of what's true and what's not, but it
Mm,
helps. Even when it comes to holding someone accountable, I think it's very easy for someone who has no reference, has no family of yours to be accountable to do something so horrific. Now, I think it's even more twisted for someone who has met your family, has met all of your friends, to do something twisted. I'm like, well, you just one twisted person, aren't you?
mhm,
So, reference to me is like just a little bit important and it helps fledge out the red flags. Now, sometimes a system is faulty young, so I can't tell the red flags. Hey, I'm just like, is it me? Because you go through a little bit of, okay, well, first for me it was like you see my mom go through a little bit of this violence and abuse, and then I go through it a little bit, but now I'm questioning myself. I'm like, well, I didn't get hit,
mm,
so am I being dramatic? Or I mean, he did make a threat, but he didn't do it. And I don't know of any girlfriend that he's done it to. Is it me? So you start kind of questioning your ability to detect those red flags and nip them in the butt before they become something bigger. And by the time they are something bigger, you're like, oh, God damn it. This person's been showing me who they are.
mm,
And this is like
oh,
one of my last relationships before I got married. This person's been
mm.
showing me who they are, but I was so in love with the version of
Oh,
them that I had created in my mind that
oh,
it was so
yeah,
difficult to see them as who they
yeah,
are.
yeah. We can be easily blinded by what we believe is love.
Mm,
And
mm,
it's not. It's just that we care so much for this person and we don't want to see any faults in them. We don't want to believe that this is what it is, and we can be so blinded by that. Um, and To your point about the friends, I do hear you. Although I think that it's still very, very possible to know somebody's friends, know their life, and still only know the true them behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
A side of them that no one else in their life actually gets to see but you. So that's just an experience I had. I felt like I was with somebody who, even his own friends, I don't believe saw him the way I saw him. Because it's a very intimate space, so you get to see them. You become their mirror, and you get to see a lot. You get to see a lot that I don't think anybody outside of that space gets to see sometimes. So back to what you were saying of doubting yourself at some point, that's why you have to trust your intuition as well, and you have to, and that's where self-love comes in, because if you love yourself, you will not tolerate anything less than that love. You will not tolerate anything less than what you think is your worth. And sometimes, we are blindsided by love, and that's the way we do get to love ourselves even more through the experiences we go through.
I think that's so important. The part about self-love. The difficulty in my healing process wasn't getting over what had happened or what I think had been done to me or
Yeah.
what role I had played in everything. It was that I had not loved myself enough to walk away. That was like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, that's how the argument ends. You can say this person did this person showed me, but what did you do?
Yeah.
And in the instances where you did nothing, why not? And the question circles right back to self-hate. It's like you hated yourself. You found yourself in a position where you said, I can settle for this. I am okay with this. I kind of
Oh
deserve this,
gosh.
and to have that kind of a bad relationship with yourself is so detrimental, not just in relationships, but in friendships, in workplaces, in everything, because you have to love yourself. Like, no one will love you as much as you can love you, and if you're willing to love other people, then maybe you should love you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, love sometimes is not all roses and hearts. Sometimes love is no. Sometimes love is leaving that situation that you know is not helping you or serving you in any way. No matter how much you love this person, no matter if they're your family, no matter like what, knowing that self-love is walking away from situations that you don't want to walk away from sometimes. And I mean, it's also very important to forgive yourself because you are only as wise as you were. You know what you know now because of what you went through then. So it's only fair to forgive yourself and to love that inner child within you, because that inner child was being shown to you throughout that whole relationship. Because I mean, it takes two people. As much as it does hurt us, we're both in this relationship together, and he was a mirror to me as much as I was to him. So whatever he was reflecting back was all me, you know. And like you said, it showed you what you were tolerating. It showed you what you were settling for. It showed you what you took. It showed you what you accepted, and all of that is self-love because you now know what you will not tolerate anymore. You now know what it feels like to be in a position that is not serving and is very harmful to you. And you now know what it feels like to make decisions that are not self-serving. And you will not make those decisions again. It's in your awareness now. Well, if you do, then I guess that's a cycle, and maybe there's something else you need to learn from that cycle. But it's very important to forgive yourself because that's the person at the end of the day that we need to forgive the most in any situation, no matter what it is. But at the end of the day, the person you need to forgive the most is yourself. So, like you said, allowing yourself to go through it, choosing to stay for experiencing something that you otherwise wouldn't want to.
Mm.
But I always say that I wouldn't change a thing, and if I had to experience everything I experienced, I'd do it again.
I don't know if
I'd
I'd
do
do
it
it
again.
again. I don't know.
I would. Because I've become such a dope ass woman. Like, I wouldn't have outside of those experiences. Um, and I made it. You know, I'm still in one piece. I made it. It's like, okay, if I can go through that, I can go through anything.
Yeah. I think when I say I wouldn't, it's not that I'm not appreciative of the woman I have become now because of that.
Yeah.
I feel like the woman now still sometimes has moments of sliding in and back, in and out of memories
Yeah.
of trauma. You know, trauma is very hard to erase from the
Oh,
mind. And so, simple thing, simple
yeah.
thing. I'm not a hugger. I'm not a hugger. And I had to think about it, you know, because someone else at work saw me get a hug and looked at my face and they were like, "Oh, Jesus, Mpho, what was wrong with you?" And I was like, I don't know what it is. Like, I just feel uncomfortable if someone wants to hug me. And now that I'm in the healing process of a lot of things, I'm opening up. I'm like, okay, I can hug. And there's people I love to hug. I'm like, okay, we can do this. But I recall a situation, like in the healing process that I was undergoing, trying to determine why I don't like hugs. I recall a situation
Yeah.
being choked, you know, in a
Shoot.
hugged position. And I realized it's not that I don't like hugging, it's that there's a part of my brain that still associates hugging with being suffocated and with being choked. I literally have had to push people away and be like, oh no, you're squeezing me too hard. But I think if this me hadn't gone through that, I would have been lighter. I would be like, oh, it's hugs. Come on, guys, let's hug. And yay, you know, like less affected. And I realized like unpacking trauma, heavens, is not an easy task.
Oh,
It's a thing that you think you have dealt with, and then you watch a movie, and it's that same narrative is in a movie or it's in a song or something. And you
yeah.
realize you still have to unpack another layer of that trauma and
Yeah.
work through it. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
saying dealing I lazy.
I'm not
No,
finished.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now there's
Yeah.
a little bit more to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sort of it does break my heart a little bit that our generation has so much healing to do.
Mm,
It's like it feels like we're healing very, very deep, deep subconscious wounds
mm,
that we didn't even know existed or it was playing out in our lives.
mm,
But it also feels like the most powerful generation because of that reason.
mm,
Um, the healing never stops. Like it just, you think you're over something and you're like, oh God, this again. I thought I was over this, but it's like,
mm,
nah, you're not over this. Or at least maybe you are part of over a certain aspect of it, but there's another layer to it that you need to unpack. Um, that you need to deal with that's affecting your life or affecting your thinking or affecting your perspective. Um, so yeah, it's healing is messy. It's messy. It's painful in the beginning, but at some point it does become interesting. You start welcoming it in a way that's like, okay, I'm gonna grow from this. You start looking forward to the transformation that comes from it. Because once you feel something, you're transformed. You move from someone who didn't like hugs to someone who's the biggest hugger in the world.
mm.
You know, and it comes from a place of love now. It comes from a place of wanting to spread that love and expressing the love that is you. Um, yeah, so it is very important to heal, and it's very important to have support again in the healing process. And love yourself through it all. Like, be very, it's so important to be gentle with yourself, to be very, very gentle with that inner child, because that's who you're dealing with. You're dealing with that child that went through those traumatic experiences, the child that had to hide away, the child that took it all in and didn't know what to do with it and just it became part of your makeup.
Mm,
So rewiring yourself is a real thing.
yes.
It's a
Yeah.
real thing.
Yikes. So I'm gonna shift the conversation a little bit, still slightly trying to figure out gender-based violence, right? Women
Yeah.
intuitively engage their maternal instincts to care for men in their lives. What is the difference between mothering versus building with your partner?
Ooh. uh, that is a very fine line because it's mothering, wifing, and then growing.
Mm,
um,
yeah, yeah.
the difference for me, I would say, is when you're growing with your partner, like you said in the beginning, you guys are equal. Um, you're
Mm,
able to communicate. There's open communication. There's an there's almost like an equal amount of effort and energy being exchanged. And mothering is it's when there's no changed behavior. Honestly, it's almost like it feels like you're cleaning up after them, or you'll keep telling or reprimanding your man at some or your partner. Let me say this day and age. There are many. There's different sexual orientations, but your partner, when you feel like you have to reprimand your partner, sorry, and nothing's being
mm,
changed, that's like mothering almost. When you feel like you want to do every single thing for this person, everything, you want to wake up and I'll make the bed, and it could communicate in very small, subtle, everyday things as well. Or we also, as women, we grow up being taught that it's very important to cater to your man and his needs at all times. And I feel like
mm,
that should be done out of love, not because I'm obligated to
mm,
do so, or not because that's the definition of what me as a woman, or yeah, who me as a woman is in this
mm,
relationship with my man or my partner. And it's not that.
yeah.
I want to be able to cater to him because it's coming out of love and because he had a tired and long ass day, and I feel empathy, and I'm like, oh, I want to take care of you because that's what I would do for myself. So I want to extend that self
Mm,
love to you
mm,
too.
mm,
But growing with somebody comes from communication and changed behavior. You have to be able to openly be vulnerable with your partner, um, openly be able to talk
mm.
about very difficult things, things that affect you.
So good, so good. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I'm thinking about, for me, the telltale sign of mothering someone versus growing with them is the mothering portion.
Yeah.
If the mother calls you to find out where her son is, mm-mm, mm-mm. Once or twice, yeah, he's not answering his phone. We get it. Yeah, one, he's not there. If every day, no, guys, yeah, his mother, hey? Like, if the mother's now calling you to hold him accountable or to do or say some of the things that she would do as his mother,
Mm,
mm-mm,
yeah,
mm-mm, mm-mm.
yeah,
There is pleasure in being introduced to the parents
yeah,
as someone that the person you are dating is trying to build a relationship with.
yeah.
But there's also a unspoken responsibility
Mm,
that can sometimes present itself when the
yes,
family or the parents expect you to
fully,
help them raise their
oh,
child.
fully,
And I mean this, like, in no offense to any family. I don't think that I was a perfect child or that I came from a
yeah,
perfect family, but I think that I am a very self-sufficient adult Like,
Yeah.
Anye, you won't see my mom calling other people and being like, "Where's Mpho?"
Mm.
Because I know when my mom calls, I need to answer.
Mm.
And you won't see my mom calling people to be like, "No, please tell Mpho to do this or this or this," because my mom knows how to call me out on my bullshit. My mom doesn't care about my
Mm.
feelings. She's made it very clear. She's
I
like,
love your mom.
"Mm, as a black person, me, I don't care about your feelings, you know? Like, you can cry if you want, you can kill yourself if you want." She's gone as far as to say that.
She's
And
so
that's why I think
patriot. Yeah.
mental health in black families is not taken seriously because my mom's
It's
like, you want
not.
to die? Go die. At least I don't have to pay for your breathing. You're like an expensive person to live.
I can hear your mom saying that.
So, as a woman, when you have to do that for your partner, I think
Yeah,
you need to take a step back and say,
really,
how long is it going to take me and this person to get to the
really.
point where we are doing an exchange where I'm
Yes,
putting in as much as they're putting in? It's
exactly.
like you can help someone, you can help. There are women completely willing and able to do that, and kudos to them, and gratitude to them. But I also think that parents should be taking the time now to consider this. Like, am I raising a self-sufficient adult? Because it's not just about the person they get married to. It's about when you have passed on
Exactly.
from this realm, can this individual continue to live without you? And if not, then you have done a
Exactly.
disservice to this child.
Yeah.
You have.
Yeah, for real. Because, geez, man, as parents, you have such a huge, huge responsibility. You're in charge of molding someone. You're in charge of molding someone's values, principles, belief systems. So it's so important, like you said, as parents of today, to take these things into account and equally teach both our boys and our girls how to be self-sufficient, how to be self-aware, um, how to be self-loving as well. And like you said, it's a lot. I mean, as a woman, to have to mother your partner, it's a lot. Like that's a lot of emotional energy that you're putting into this person that you're not getting back yourself. Who's taking care of you as well on an emotional level? Who's who's supporting you? Like where's the balance in that relationship? It's a lot, and trying to there's a difference between helping someone deal with their traumas and their past experiences and just also being a martyr, just being there for them to react from those experiences towards you, and you are there like, oh no, it's okay, it's because you're like this, so it's fine. Making excuses for them as well, it doesn't work. And that's why I said change behavior is
No,
it's a
it
very
doesn't.
important aspect because that's where the growth is. Like when you grow, you change. So if there's no growth, you're not changing.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, mothering is tiring,
yeah.
man. It is tiring. And you did raise an
Yo.
important point when you said that sometimes you are introduced to their parents, and their parents almost put this unspoken responsibility onto you. Like, okay, now why didn't you? It's actually crazy. I was with someone, and his mother asked me why I let him dress the way he was dressing. It means that I don't love him. And I was like, excuse me.
Where ma? This boy
Respect.
comes out of your house, your womb. Get happy.
I was like, wait, what? How how does that translate to me loving him? Number one. Number two, your son is a grown ass man. He chose to wear this. I'm not about to tell him what he can and can't wear. He chose to wear this. How is that? How's that? No
Yeah.
ways. So yeah, it's very important, and I see
Mm,
it in my
mm,
mother too. Sometimes the way she mothers my brothers, when they don't, if they maybe missed out on something,
mm,
or they don't wash the dishes, and it's like there's a point between helping somebody, like oh they forgot, no it's okay, I'll wash it for you, and a point where it's like no, they must come back and see what they did so that they don't do it again. but she always feels the need to just
Mm,
to her it's helping them. She feels like she's helping them and she does it out of love. But
mm,
the way I see it is like you are not helping
mm,
them because you are blocking them from growing. You're blocking them from learning how to do this
mm,
themselves. Because we can't block people's growth as well. We need to be very aware of blocking people's growth in the name of helping.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. There's helping, and then there's also
Yes.
disabling,
Yes.
you know. You can help to a certain point, but if you overextend that help, you will disable the person you're trying to help.
Fully, fully.
Mm,
You're making them incapable of learning
mm,
and knowing how to be self-sufficient themselves.
mm. Okay, so we're having this conversation in August. This is Women's Month in South Africa. What role do you think women who have never experienced gender based violence can play in assisting those who are victims and survivors? If there's any women who
Wow.
don't experience gender based violence in South Africa.
That's a tough one because it can go two ways.
Hmm.
It's like trying to get medical advice from someone who's not a doctor. So it might be difficult for women who have never experienced this to help because they don't know what it
Mm,
feels like. But um, on the other side, it might help to have women who have a very strong sense of self worth, um, a very strong sense of self awareness, and who are also aware of the situation themselves. Because that is what needs to be taught in us women. As much as, yeah, in us women, we need to be taught how to be stronger for ourselves. We need to be taught um, how to recognize our self worth, how to know when a situation is not right for us, how to listen to our intuition, because our intuition is powerful. Everybody has powerful intuition, but a woman's intuition, that it never fails you. It never ever fails you. So learning how to trust yourself as a woman, listening to the red
mm,
flags.
mm,
So I think having women who have a strong sense of self worth and self awareness will probably help women in these cases be able to identify, or women who have not, who are still growing up, to be able to identify when something isn't right. So if somebody, like you said, raises their voice at you or talks down at you, that's not okay. Nobody should be able to do that. So it might help to have those sort of tips and
mm,
advice being given out from
mm,
women, I guess, who have not been in the situation. But like I said, it also might go the other way where they might not be able to relate to these women because they don't know what it feels like to be in a situation, which is then why we need to have women who have been empowered by these situations to then move forward because
mm,
they understand exactly how it feels to be this person in the situation, to be where you are, wherever that is, whether that's self hate stage, whether you're still stuck in this relationship, whether you're questioning yourself, whether you're in pain or you're hurting. They know they know the process, they know how it feels like to be where you
mm.
are right and what it's going to take to get to a better place.
So many good points came out of that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add, I've seen it happen and I call myself out on it sometimes too. It is so important that when a victim has built the courage
Yeah.
to one, share their story, and then two, seek help, to not be
Yeah.
judgmental, to not come from a place of trying
Yeah.
to explain and victim blame and you should have, you could have, maybe if you had. It's too much.
Mm.
I think for
Oh.
those who've never
Mm-mm.
experienced gender-based violence and abuse,
Mm-mm.
so lucky, so blessed, so wonderful that you have
Mm.
lived a life untainted by such misery. And it is my hope and greatest, deepest desire that those people have enough love, enough understanding to give to those who have experienced it, you know? It's like you can't speak on someone else's
Mm,
struggle.
mm.
You just cannot. And I see it happen on social media. I see people trying to be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, utandizi though," "Oh, yari." No,
Oh, oh,
when there is a dead body, I don't
mm,
it the things that have happened in that dead body's life no longer matter. Like it's over. Like you can't arrest it. You can't, you know, yell at it or kill it it's gone. It's done. So the least that we can do is
mm,
offer respect. And sometimes respect is not coming from a high horse and trying to make everyone else feel like, yeah, well,
mm,
that's what happens when you're stupid, because some of those comments, some of those reactions give power to the abusers, and they give other
mm,
women who are going through this great fear to come forward. It's like, okay, if I come forward too, this is going to be the reaction. Like people are going to victim blame, people are going to label me and, victimize me continuously. So just come from a place of love, like everywhere you go. I just want so many people to give their love and to have love.
mm,
And if you have none to give, then maybe focus on self healing and get yourself to a point where you can give it, even at times where you don't think it needs to be given or things could have been done differently.
mm, mm. Yeah. And I think that's also a very important topic to discuss maybe in another
Mm,
podcast of what it means. What does love actually mean to you? Because a lot of these acts
mm,
are done out of love, eh? Like the the person, the
mm,
abuser thinks that they're doing it out of love. And it might not
mm,
be out of love. You think you're doing it out of love, and it's not love. That's not how love feels.
mm,
That's not what love looks like. Um, and yeah,
mm,
if there's one wish I had for the world, it would be that judgment will be removed. Like people stop being
mm,
so judgmental from all aspects in life. Just stop being so judgmental. Like whatever happens to this person in this person's life has nothing to do with you. You're there as an observer, as an audience, as somebody there to learn and live through this person. But you have no right to judge anybody based on your own beliefs, based on what you think is right or wrong, based on your own internal
mm,
system. It's like you have no place to do
mm,
that. And yeah, and that's why it's important to show compassion for people. Um,
mm,
and when you love yourself, you're able to see the pain in other people. When you are aware of
mm,
yourself, you're able to see the hurt in the words that people use, even if they're angry. And it's like you can tell you're just there, like, man, I want to give you a hug because you are just an angry ass
mm.
child.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
you got no
yeah,
love growing up. Like, I'm sorry that this is
yeah.
the world that you live in, because we live on the
Mm,
same planet, but we all live in different worlds. We all live in complete
mm,
different worlds.
mm,
So the world that people live in is crazy. It's like, damn, I'm so sorry that
mm.
this is the world that you live in. And here is
Yeah.
my extension of love to you, because I know how hard it's been to be an angry child all your life, or how heavy it
Mm,
must be to
mm,
be to carry this pain and this burden. And it's so important to take that power back too. And that's why,
mm,
going
mm,
back to the first initial you said, why it's important to tell your story, for the purpose of taking your power back, so that the story no longer
mm.
controls you.
Sure. so good. So many good parts. My head is racing. We have been talking for an hour, but I'm like, so many good parts. My head is racing. You bring up such a good conversation when you say there are so many different ways to love.
Yeah.
And we learn about positive love languages, but there's also negative love languages that people have learned and they have to reprogram and unlearn. Maybe for them, putting your fists at people and stabbing and killing is a type of love language that they know. They grew up experiencing, and it's the only love language they know. But you also bring up a good part when you say, I look at people and I'm like, how can you be so angry? You probably need love. I like the fact that you use the term
Mhm.
child, like this child. Why are you angry?
Mm,
Because I think there are adults who have grown up, but they have the
yeah.
children version of them inside. The
Mm,
inner child
mm,
still needs so much of that healing, so
yeah.
much of that love to bring them. One of the things that I've been doing with my phobias and trying to get past them is talking to the inner child and saying,
Yeah.
listen, we're no longer young. Snakes are not that scary. For reals.
Mm.
They are a little bit, actually. For reals, for
Yeah.
reals. And it's okay to watch them on TV. They're not going to jump out at you and strangle you.
Mm,
And you're not going to have bad dreams merely because you've watched something that had snakes in them.
yeah.
But constantly rebuilding that relationship with your inner child and say, hey, maybe I didn't learn love the right way. Hmm.
Mm,
Are there some ways I can get better at this?
yeah.
How can I move my negative love languages, transition them into positive love languages?
Yeah. And I mean, a great way to look at it is think of your inner child as your actual child. Like, how would you speak to your actual child? So when you feel scared, think of think of that emotion as like your inner child telling you like, man, I'm scared. And it's like, no, don't, it's okay, like, let's do this. Like, how would you speak to your inner child?
Mm,
How would you speak to yourself? There's this really cool exercise that um, I saw, or I heard of rather, where it's like sometimes go to an old picture of yourself and then speak to yourself from the place you're at right now to that child that is you. And what would you say? What would you say to the younger you?
mm,
If your inner child was the child that you had, how would you speak to that child? When she's sad, how would you talk to her? When she's happy, how would you treat her? When she just needs a hug, and when you just need a hug, how are you going to get that hug? Maybe go to your husband, or maybe you go hug someone else, or maybe you just need to watch a movie, maybe. So it's like our inner children are actual children. Like, they get happy, they get sad, they sometimes want too many sweets, the days where we're craving just a little too much, and we have to be disciplined and like, that is gonna actually hurt your health right now. Or yes, let's have ice cream today, why not? It's like they actual children with actual feelings. That's who you are. And your inner child, I don't think ever grows up. That's how I think we I mean, okay, maybe they do, but it's like a youthful part of yourself that stays youthful. Uh, yeah, and it's important to keep that youthful part of your life and be the mother you never had, be the
it
father you never
is.
had
It
to
is.
yourself, the brother, the sister, the friend, the person that you needed growing up, the person you are right now.
Mm, mm. I think we have brought up so many good options towards the end of this conversation because
No.
my last question was going to be, what do you think we can do as a country to deal with the increasing rate of femicide? And it's self. The answer is self. you know
Mm,
Self-love, self-awareness, self-work,
mm,
self-consciousness, self. People need to confront themselves and deal with their bullshit. Like, call yourself out on your bullshit. Like, sometimes I'm like, oof, Mpho, like, was that necessary? You know, was that really necessary? Like, let's have a staff meeting, you and I.
Yeah.
Let's talk it
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Was it necessary? Like, how could
Exactly.
we have handled this better? You know, parent
Exactly.
yourself. I think that's what's been most frustrating about the pandemic and lockdown. No alcohol, no clubbing, no social gatherings. People have had to
Yeah.
confront themselves, and people have used so many techniques
Yeah.
to confidently avoid themselves that COVID forced people to like be with themselves, and they realize,
Yeah.
ugh, maybe I don't like me as much as I thought I do, you know, and can
Yeah.
someone open a bar so I can go drink and not have to deal with this? And it hurts. You know, initially when I started the journey with myself to look at where I was wrong, I think I was telling you, or maybe I was telling someone else, now my narratives have had to change. When I tell stories about what has gone wrong in my life, I always take accountability for the parts that
Really.
I was actively involved in why those stories went wrong. You know, I don't tell
Yeah.
one-sided stories. I'm not like, yo, they did this and this and this and no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. I did this, which I believe was an appropriate reaction or may have been an appropriate
Mm.
reaction for something like this. And this is why I think this, take accountability and call yourself out on your bullshit, yo. Just do it.
Yeah. And don't forget to celebrate yourself also. It's very important because I feel like we've gotten so comfortable with doing shadow work, which is the whole healing and, calling yourself
Mhm.
out. And yes, it's very important to take accountability, responsibility. But also, man, like celebrate yourself. Like, look how far you've come. Look how much you've
Mhm.
survived. Look how much you've achieved for yourself. Look at the
Mhm.
growth. So sometimes we grow so much, we forget to look back and be like, damn, I've actually grown
Yeah.
a lot. Like, I'm actually not that
Mm.
person anymore. That's pretty cool. Like,
Mm.
hey, okay. That's, like recognize when you don't react the same anymore and um you actually find yourself reacting better to a situation that you previously would have reacted totally without any thought, you know? So it's like recognize those parts of yourself that have healed and that are stronger because that's the foundation in which you're going to go onto the next phase of your life to unpack the next layers of your life because when you unpack things you need to heal it means that you're ready to do so. It means that you're in a very strong place for you to deal with those things because we couldn't deal with trauma in the past because we weren't
Mm.
equipped to deal with it in the past. We weren't at that point in our lives to deal with it in the past. But now we are. We're stronger, we're more self aware, we understand ourselves and the world we live in a little bit
Mm.
better. And it's important to really, really celebrate how far you've come because that is the foundation for which the next phase of your life is going to be built upon. So don't forget to take the time to recognize yourself in a more positive and encouraging light as well. And yes, definitely don't forget to call yourself out on your bullshit. That's also part of self love, calling yourself out. Like, listen, yo, like you could have you didn't have to shout. Like you got the message. Like, damn girl. you know.
Yeah.
So that's also very, very important. But also from a place
Mm.
of love, Not like, why did you do that? Like, you're so stupid. Like, oh, I'm such an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, those words, they hurt you. Like, they really hurt the warrior within
Mm.
you. So, watch how you speak to yourself. Words are very powerful because they translate into thoughts as well, thoughts into beliefs and stories. And watch the stories you tell yourself because that's the narrative you live by.
Mm.
That's your chapter. That's what you keep writing about yourself right now. So it's gonna keep playing out anyways. Um, and with what we can do in the country, man, I feel like times like this where I think this is why I did psychology because maybe I should get involved in things
Mm.
like this. But like I said, it's we can start by community-based projects, I believe, where we can we can have, it's almost like a school of psychology, let me say, or a school of growth or self-discovery, where maybe kids do go to school to learn ABCs, but they also come to school to learn about self-awareness, to learn about how to handle emotions. When you're sad, you don't go and cut yourself. When you're sad, you come and you speak to somebody, and this is a space where we can talk about it. Like, how was your week? What happened at home? How did that make you feel? Like a space more, I guess, and that's why we have psychiatrists and therapy sessions and things like that. But I think for a more for the youth, for people to relate to the youth, and I guess centers for men to feel more comfortable to go to. Because as Africans also, we weren't encouraged to go to AA meetings or things like that. Like, that's more westernized notions that we see on TV and in movies. But I don't know how much of that is actually encouraged in Africa, in South Africa. Like, for men to go to centers to speak about their anger issues, or to speak about anything that's really disturbing them in a group setting or privately. I actually don't know how much of that is set up. We do have hotlines, we do have all these things, but I think encouraging those sorts of places should also, I believe, would be a solution to assisting this whole gender-based violence and abuse mentality that we have.
And normalizing vulnerability are the words that are on my mind right now. Just normalizing
For sure.
both for females. You don't have to be that strong warrior all the time, and for males too, you don't have to be this kind of person all the time. You can just be you. And sometimes being human is the most powerful thing you can be on this planet.
That's ultimate freedom. Being yourself is ultimate freedom. Yeah.
Melissa, thank you so much for taking the time to journey with us. I just appreciate how you shared genuine parts of yourself, spoke from the heart, and brought light to some thoughts that I had not even considered. It's just been really, really good. I know the episode's going to be like an hour long at least.
A worthy hour. Definitely a worthy hour. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's a bit late on your side. Taking the time to actually hear me out and for considering me. I feel so honored to be a guest on your show. It's a true honor, and I'm really glad that our paths have crossed once more, and to this beautiful place, and to see you, to this beautiful woman who is so gentle now. I'm very gentle, you're still very sweet. You're still very sweet. But the growth and the warrior and the woman that you're becoming, and the battles that you've survived, it's very humbling to hear about and experience and see. So thank you, as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for starting this. This is a great podcast, and for allowing me into your journey.
Thank you so much. And this is not the last time the audience will get to hear from you. I look forward to connecting with you in person when I do come to South Africa, and sharing your many talents with the JWM family. You're someone who I've definitely appreciated reconnecting with and going deeper into conversations like this and so much more. So again, thank you. And I want people to engage with you and in your content, because I know you do other things on the side. Fela, you've got side hustles, so this is the opportunity to plug yourself in, let people know, where they can find you and how they can consume your content and connect with you or connect with your content.
Sure. Sure, thank you. Well, you can follow me on all social platforms at only ONLY underscore Gaj GAJ. And I also have a series called MELisodes, in which I expressed everything me as an artist, but there's a lot more coming, a lot more of these kinds of topics and conversations coming along as well. So stay tuned for that, beautiful people. And otherwise, social media is where you'll find me, and that's where I'll be at.
And in person, when I come to South Africa, we'll do a video live stream.
And in person, definitely. A lot more to come. There's a lot more content, a lot of growth. The journey hasn't ended. It's about the journey, not the destination.
Like our high
Right?
school banner just before we enter assembly said, the elevator to success is broken. Use the stairwell. Like, yeah.
Yeah. How crazy is it? Like, I don't know if you also have flashbacks of little talks from assembly in high school.
Oh my God. I think this is why we're these kind of people having deep conversations at 10 to midnight for me, at 10 a.m. in the morning for you. People are like, we need to drink. Why are they having these kind of conversations?
Oh God, I keep having flashbacks of these little motivational speeches that we had, especially from Miss Fonseo. It keeps coming back to me like what? And I keep thinking of our song, like how inspiring was our school song. Yeah.
I keep thinking, I just recently wrote a poem about Mrs. Rangasamy that I think you'll appreciate. Yeah. It's like I have a lot of flashbacks.
Yeah, especially from conversations with teachers, Miss VJ, shout out to Miss VJ, Miss Reddy, even Miss Naidu. Like, I felt very connected to these women because they shared a bit of themselves with us. They really, and Miss Rangasamy. And I'm sure there's more, but I know that off the top of my head, those were the ones that made an impression on me.
Yeah, and Mr. Strout, we could never forget the memory
Mr.
making and
Strout.
documenting he did for everyone. Yeah.
It's the weather, Miss Kibuka. There's just so many. There's so many. So many. Yeah. Sorry if we didn't listen to you back then, but you know. We were hormone raged kids
We listen now.
who didn't think school was cool. Yeah.
Okay, AWM family, before we end the episode, Melissa and I are aware that this is a one-sided conversation focusing solely on the women and the abuse against them. It's Women's Month, so leave us alone. On a serious note, though, I'm looking forward to inviting South African male voices to share their stories and experiences. Conversations like this are never truly wholesome unless both genders are invited, so be on the lookout for a continuation of conversations of this nature. But until then, Magolokwe, Kiotaba, Rebuile. Aloha.